Good morning, good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the fifth session of the Train the Trainer series. Today, we'll be discussing about health delivery information systems, and today our speaker is Dr. Atul Kuthadia and Dr. Pankaj Gupta. So, let's just begin with the session. Over to you, Dr. Atul.
Sure. Yeah. Good afternoon, everyone. So today we are going to talk about HDIS. Basically, what is HDIS? What are the design scalable, scalability standards? What are the different, design principles? Implementation of HDIS and change management will cover in next session. So only two topics today: introduction to healthcare delivery information system and designing a scalable and standard-based HDIS. So I'll just move to the next slide. So what exactly is healthcare delivery information system? So any application or which is being used by say hospital or doctor or telemedicine provider. So any healthcare delivery facility which is using the software which is called as healthcare delivery information system or HDIS. So for example, hospitals are using HIMS or clinics are using clinical management system. The telemedicine provider will use telemedicine platform. So all these solutions or systems is basically HDIS. So it can be a laboratory information system, radiology information system. All these systems are called as healthcare delivery information system. Dr. Manish, would you like to have any expert comments in this?
Thanks, Dr. Atul. So, yeah, as you mentioned exactly that any provider, any kind of clinician, any provider using any healthcare IT system, any IT systems will be called, that system will be called as a health delivery information system. Because at the health delivery, any healthcare provider that is providing the service is using an IT system. So then, it comes in the category of health delivery information system. There are certain specifications for that we'll deal with as we go in. So back to you, Dr.
Sure. Thank you, Dr. Prakash. Yeah. So basically, this slide depicts, different information systems available in the healthcare segment in India, basically. And if you see all these tier 1, tier 2 companies like iSoft, Track Health, which have already left the Indian market. I mean, they are not currently active in this Indian market. Now, if you consider TCS or Wipro or Religare, they have already shut down their HIS division itself. So tier 3, for example, Akhil or Srishti, they are still there. And of course, I mean, Manorama like solutions are there. But what is important at this point of time is basically digital startups. I mean, they are really going to play a very important role in this segment, basically because they are bringing a lot of innovative solutions in the market. And so if you see the right hand side, the pyramid, right? So there are multiple levels in any HDIS. So level 1 is basically at the bottom, which is, we call it as hoteling function, where admission or outpatient department or inventory control, all these kind of functionalities or modules are present. Now in the second, which is in the blue, which are basically order entry, so laboratory or whether it is a diagnostic, whether it is a pharmacy, surgery management, all these come into the this segment basically. What is important in yellow, basically at the top of pyramid, is basically electronic medical record and clinical decision support system. Now, if you consider Indian market and all this, hospital information system or any other system for that matter, what we are lacking in basically these two important modules, basically whether it is EMR, whether it is clinical decision support system, which are still not really being adopted by the Indian hospitals or healthcare delivery organizations. I'll just move to next slide where there are different products which are brought by healthcare startups in India, and most of these products, if you see, are particularly teleconsultation platforms. All these healthcare startups basically are really bringing a lot of innovative solutions. So if you see, my Upchar, right now, this particular, now this is a company which is bringing OTT content. OTT content is nothing but the content in terms of whether audio files or video information, or the content which is made available to the patients and doctors. So that is called as OTT. And basically, if you have seen WebMD, which is US-based website which gives a lot of information or content in medical or healthcare segment, similar to that, in Indian languages, 13 different Indian languages, these particularly My Upchar startup brings a lot of content for the use of doctors and patients. So this is just a list of all the startups which are offering their different solutions in Indian market. Now let's come to primary care. So healthcare delivery basically comprises starting from primary care, then secondary care, tertiary care. So what are different systems which are available in India in these different segments? So coming to primary care is the first contact, right? First contact, or maybe a general practitioner, a clinic which is offering the outpatient services, or it can be ASHA worker or nurse practitioners. Basically, all these are the primary care where there is no admission required for the patient. All these solutions like Practo started their operations only for the appointment scheduling, but now they are into EMR. So clinic management, they are slowly coming into teleconsultation also. So all these are primary care. And other examples like Napier, Doc Engage, again clinic management system. Live Health basically is a laboratory information system for aggregator sort of. My Healthcare again is a EMR, doctor app, My Clinic, Akhil System, and Care Expert. I mean, all these are examples of primary care. Now coming to secondary and tertiary care, there are lots of players, of course. I mean, iSoft is there, TrackCare, which are having their implementation in India, but they are no more active in Indian market. Akhil System, then Paras by Srishti, Napier, all these are the examples of the solutions which are being used by different hospitals or laboratories in India. Now coming back to what are different models, having said that the hospital information system or clinic management system. So depending on the functionalities or features of that particular solution, these modules are basically part of the solution. So if you consider clinic management system or OPD, then in that case registration, billing, EMR, and giving orders, I mean, only those models are important. But hospital needs a lot of models. Say for example ADT, which is nothing but admission, discharge, and transfer. Nursing module, which takes care of nursing stations, particularly whatever activities nurses are doing are being recorded in the nursing module. So for example, even they are raising the intent or receiving the medications in the ward, bedside procedures, input output of the patient, temperature charts. All these activities are being taken care by nursing module. Now EMR, as far as EMR are concerned, again it's an electronic medical record, which actually is important from the clinical data management perspective, where doctor will right from your chief complaints till your orders, everything is being recorded in EMR. So chief complaint, history of present illness, family history, past surgical history, everything is documented in EMR. Now after EMR can be of simple as SOAP note format. SOAP note is nothing but subjective, objective, assessment, and plan. So subjective is what? So right from your chief complaint till your history part is your subjective. Objective is what are observations being made by the doctor, the physical examination, which is part of objective. Now, assessment is done by doctor using, investigations, whether it is a laboratory or radiology, and based on the investigations, doctor comes to a diagnosis, which is nothing but a part of assessment. And plan is basically your medication orders, your laboratory orders, radiology orders, or any other procedures, which is part of your plan. Now, emergency module, basically, again, in a hospital setup, which is very important because a lot of patients land in emergency, and there is basically the protocols in emergency department are different than IPD or OPD department. So, of course, emergency module will definitely help hospitals in recording all emergency patient records. Now, laboratory information system, where once doctor has given the order for the laboratory investigation, the order goes into laboratory information system module, and where right from your sample receiving till your report is being issued to the patient, all the functionalities are part of this particular module or laboratory module. Okay. Radiology, again, similar to laboratory module, where patient once given the order for, say, for example, sonography, right? So in that case, patient will go to the radiology department. He's received in the laboratory radiology department, and then all these procedures, whether it is CT or AMRI or sonography, is done on the patient, and reporting is done, and report is issued to the doctor, which also again comes to the EMR, where doctor can see the reports. Now, pharmacy is basically where doctors are ordering the prescription or medications, which goes to the pharmacy, and pharmacy issues those medications to the doctor. Now, apart from direct, issuing medications to the patient, pharmacy also has got a lot of other important functions, such as, now suppose nursing station has raised an indent for certain medications, which goes to the pharmacy, and pharmacy will supply those medications to the nursing station. Now, as far as diet is concerned, where in a hospital setup particularly, diet is basically diet and kitchen comes together, where depending on the patient, say for example, patient is a diabetic patient. In that case, the diabetic diet is being offered to the patient. The notification goes to the kitchen that okay, particularly bed number 110 of general ward is a diabetic patient, and it has to have the diabetic food. In that case, the kitchen will supply the daily food, which is a diabetic food basically. So all this diet management is done in diet module. Now, inventory, which is again a very important part of the HIMS or any hospital information system or hospitals, because inventory, again, nowadays every hospital wants their inventory under control, right? So right from your supplier management, receiving the goods, or hospital, the medications in the warehouse. So inventory will have the functions right from your warehouse till your last point of dispensing facility, for example, ward or pharmacy. All these come into inventory. I think Dr. Pankaj, I would like your expert comments on inventory, basically, because it's a huge topic, right?
Sure, Dr. Atul. So inventory, the entire supply chain management starts from the time when any material, any drug, consumable, durable, enters into the hospital to the time it gets used. So, let's take the example of drugs. So it starts from the warehouse, then to the main store, then to the smaller stores, then to the pharmacy. So the pharmacy can be in mostly, when we say pharmacy in a hospital, it's an inpatient pharmacy. So, and then, the pharmacy, from there, it goes to the nursing station. So this entire inventory management now has to be taken care of. Rarely ever a hospital information system will have an inventory management right from the warehouse. So usually there will be a separate supply chain management ERP solution that will have to be interfaced with a hospital information system that will start off from the either the main store or the sub store. So so it's a very complex area, and it is also very important because the drugs will have to be traced, and the batch numbers will have to be consistent with the expiry dates and everything. So there is a recall they may be required. There could be a question on a particular batch, and then that needs to be answered. So every vial, every bottle, every strip that needs to be sort of tracked. And specifically when you have to do the process called the BCMA, barcode medication administration, which we spoke the last session. Now, every time the drug is dispensed, there is a barcode that is printed and put onto either the strip or the bottle, and that partly is managed by the inventory management system, partly by the pharmacy system, partly by the HIS, the hospital information system, and partly, the nursing workbench, which is sometimes part of HIS, sometimes it is not part of HIS. So it's a very complex area with a lot of interfaces and usually a challenge. In no other industry you will find this, because in every other industry what you will find is that in the entire inventory management will be done by an ERP system. Here the ERP will manage the main store at most, and after that everything will be done by the pharmacy management system and the hospital information system.
Sure.
Over to you, Dr. Atul.
Yeah. Thank you, Dr. Pankaj. Now, coming to CSSD, I mean Central Sterilization Supply Department, basically, which is again very important, module in hospitals, because tracking all the equipment, say, or the needed for the surgery or scheduling it, basically, is very important. Treatment room basically is nothing but small procedures or minor OT, or maybe injection room or dressing room. All these come into treatment room model. So specialty. So every hospital has got different, or there are single specialty hospitals or multi-specialty hospitals, and depending on the specialties, there can be different specialty templates available in the electronic medical record, where doctors will have their own chief complaints till diagnosis and investigations, or everything which is very specific to that particular specialty can be used instead of a generic template being used by all the doctors. Diagnostic or OT management, blood bank. These also modules has got their own specific functionalities and features. Telemedicine accounting again can be a part of ERP systems, and different therapies also. Now, I would like to bring your attention to one particular. Having all these modules is not enough. Okay. Now, what is important is, say for example, LIMS or laboratory module. Now, I'll give an example of a HIV investigation. Right, HIV has got two quantitative as well as qualitative, two different components. Now, what happens? Quantitative comes very fast. It comes in 2 to 3 hours of processing time, and the qualitative takes a couple of days. So one of our clients basically had an issue where quantitative report went to the patient before the qualitative report, but it was negative and then came positive in the qualitative. So you can have a functionality or feature called as clinical correlation. So in that case, such investigations which require all the components together before you issue a report to the patient, this can be configured, and this is called as clinical correlation. So if you order HIV test, which has got two components, quantitative and qualitative, the report will not go to the patient unless both the components are coming together, they are processed and reports are ready, and then doctor actually approves the report based on both these components. So all these small features, which are very important from the delivery perspective, are important. So not having just a module in your system, but also at the granular level, if you will have to really look into the features and functionalities present in the modules. So I'll just go to the next slide. So what are different challenges in basically in India we are facing, right? So most of the systems are siloed systems. There is low interoperability. I'll talk a little more on these two subjects, in my next slides. The little system flexibility for quick change. Of course, I mean there are two types of systems, right? Current hospital information systems in India basically has got monolith architecture. So what does monolith architecture means? The code base is same for the entire module, or for that matter the entire system. So if you want to make a change in that particular, say for example registration, you want to have a change. Now in that case you'll have to really work upon the entire code base of the solutions, and there are multiple what is happening is basically the impact of one change can be present in other functionalities also. So there is little function flexibility for a quick change in case of monolith architecture. And I'll talk about what are the microservices and what microservice architecture and what are the benefits of it. And of course, one citizen, multiple government experience. I'll talk about that also in my next slide. Now coming to this particular slide, where you can see these are different vertical programs, right? So whether it is a national tuberculosis program, or the AIDS program, or whether it is a surveillance program, or whether it is a malarial program, all this has got their own standalone siloed systems, right? Which are not interoperable, meaning the data from tuberculosis application does not go to the AIDS control program, and similarly other program data is also not getting back to any other system. So all these systems, whether it is a private segment, whether it is a hospital information system or EMR, whether it is state health program, there is huge data available, right? There is huge data available in different softwares, but which is because systems are not interoperable, the data cannot be aggregated, right? And if there is no data aggregation happening at a national level, the policies will not, government will not be able to take the policies which are actually based on the data available, right? So that is basically the landscape which is currently present in India basically. So all these applications are in silos. I would like to invite Dr. Pankaj to talk about these little more.
So, Dr. Atul, you have covered it pretty well. So, but the point is that a lot of systems are in silos. They're not talking to each other. The best example which I always give is if there is a low birth weight baby born to a woman who had tuberculosis in the past, there is no way you can trace it back and say that probably the low birth weight was because of tuberculosis, because the birth of the child is recorded in a different system, pregnancy in a different system, then the woman's health previous to the pregnancy in another system. If she gets tuberculosis, that's a separate system. There is no way you can actually walk this entire thing and figure out. I mean, it's a very simple thing that low birth weight and the woman had tuberculosis in the past. It's a pretty straight correlation, but in our public health system, that correlation is not so straightforward. Just because the data cannot be correlated, reasons are simple that these are all electronic systems, but they are all sitting in silos. So that's an example, I think, that will convey the message in terms of what the silos systems are. And we've been working on this for last, I would say, almost 10 years now, trying to put the standards and then trying to put the frameworks, and we'll be talking about it in future slides and lectures. Dr. Atul.
Yeah, sure. Thank you, Dr. Pankaj. Now, systems are built, right? Systems are built, but are not getting adopted. So, what are the reasons? Now, we have actually segregated those reasons in three different buckets. One is people, process, and technology. Now, as far as people are concerned, basically, the inertia to change. Why I should change? Inertia to change. So the mindset is basically why I should change. There are no incentives. Why I should do a data entry into the software? Why should I use the software? Say, for example, EMR. A lot of hospitals, though they have a module, a EMR module, still is not being used. Why? Because there are no incentives. No, it's added responsibility for a doctor to add his clinical data of the patient into the system, right? So of course, another as far as people is concerned, another factor is basically low digital illiteracy in hospital. Still a lot of old generation still working where they are not comfortable using the computers. Now, as far as processes are concerned, basically, every hospital has got their leadership directives, and based on the directives, basically, processes are followed. Now, if the management is very strong in, asking their doctors and all the staff to come or mandatorily use the system, these hospitals will definitely use that, but that has to come from the leadership, basically. So mandated reporting, namesake regulations, okay, I'm supposed to use, say for example, NABH accreditation, there are certain reports, right, required. But many times those are in Excel sheet format. So, and they are being submitted to the government, authorities or NABH authorities for their NABH certifications. User unaccountability. Now, I'll just give an example. I mean, lots of our clients in my previous organizations when I was working with, they want to have, say, for example, it's a reception or cashier. They want to have only one login for multiple, different cashiers. Now, that really gives, the unaccountability. Basically, we always suggest that every user should have their own login. But that mindset is still not there. They feel it's easy to use one login by many. And of course, technology front, basically, the healthcare basically is a very complex, subject. There are inefficient designs which are not really. We'll talk a little more about in the next slides as well. What are the design principles we should follow while developing HDI system, basically. There are no standards followed by any of these organizations, and the government has really done a good job in recommending those standards, and which industry should adopt for the future, so that all the systems would be interoperable and data aggregation at national level. Of course, it will be de-identified data, patient information will not be there, but that data will help taking decisions and making policies as well. Now, customized and configured. Now, again, coming back to the monolith versus microservices architecture, right? So monolith, which are currently most of the HIMS systems or HDI systems in India are monolith. Now, basically, what happens? Every client has got their own requirement. Some of the hospitals will follow, okay, registration, billing, payment, then patient goes to the consultation, and after that patient goes to laboratory and radiology for the investigations, and then the reports, patient will get the reports. However, some of the hospitals will follow registration, then consultation, then doctor will order, whether it is medication or laboratory or radiology orders. The orders are processed, then the billing is done, payment is taken, and the report is issued to the doctor. Now, this is a small change, right? But monolith systems will have a lot of change to be done. and which is of course, I mean, cost also comes into picture when there is a customization. Configuration, just okay, suppose it's a microservice level or architecture, application would require a minimal change, and these are more configurable systems. Now, designing scalable, configurable, and interoperable HDIs. Now, these are the building blocks. There are only 4 at this point of time we have depicted in this. There are many. Now, one of those is consent. Now, as far as the Indian segment is concerned, the healthcare segment is concerned, basically, all the data of a patient, the ownership is or should be of patient, basically. Not the all different hospitals which are using the system, and data is available in the system. They are just custodians. Okay, so patient is the owner of the data, and that mindset we should develop. The content and interoperability, we spoke about that. Systems should talk to each other. We should have standards adopted by different vendors and hospitals, so that the data will can flow from one system to another, so that systems will be interoperable. Of course, I mean, under HIPAA, there is a privacy and security of the patient information or patient data. That also is very important. Patient safety and quality of services, again, a very important building block of the good HDI system. I would like Dr. Pankaj, if he has got any expert comments on this particular slide.
So only one that, on the privacy and security, there is a privacy and security bill which is pending in, so the privacy and security bill is pending in the parliament, and absolutely. So what I'm saying is that privacy and security bill is pending in the parliament. So that is definitely something which will get approved at some point in time. But in the meantime, what is happening is that the Ministry
I'll go to the next slide now. Now, what are key design principle as far as NDHB is concerned? So NDHB is nothing but National Digital Health Blueprint, and basically the objective is to have the NDHE, that is National Digital Health Ecosystem, and for that, basically we should all these different vendors should follow and incorporate these design principles. All these registries, which is basically a facility registry or provider registry, all kind of registries should be available and being used by different systems. Mobile first design strategy, basically not necessarily a mobile, but the usability perspective, the design should be such that it should be easily usable or adaptable by the users. So all these different standards which are being depicted in this particular slide under the key principles are very important, from the longitudinal patient record and interoperability. So I think I should not go into details at this point of time. Dr. Pankaj, would you like to suggest?
Yeah, so I can talk 2 examples here. Mobile first, you said. So mobile first, the key design principle is that gone is the time when you would design for a laptop or a desktop. Now the NDHB says that you have to design for the mobile and the tablet. So you should be designing for the mobile and the tablet. So that is what is the key design principle now. And similarly, cloud first technology. So the design should be designed for the cloud. So gone is the time when you would design for a standalone system to be put in your office. So now whenever you do a design, it should be designed for the cloud.
Dr. Pankaj?
Yeah, so you can go ahead.
Your comments on this slide, please.
Yeah, so I've said that. So please go ahead.
Okay. Now, as far as what are minimum standards which are recommended by AGSB? Say for example, it's a consent management. Then this particular recommended standard needs to be used. Say for example, you must be knowing that DICOM is being used in radiology, right? So all radiology, including CT, MRI, DICOM is used. As far as clinical vocabulary is concerned, what is recommended standard is basically SNOMED City. For coding systems, so we are using ICD-10 for the diagnosis, right? So similarly, LOINC is also very important from the laboratory test perspective. So security, of course, it is digital certificate and access control. So all these slides basically talks about what are different recommended standards for different functionalities or features, such as consent management or any other coding system. Now, minimum national identifiers. Now, we spoke about interoperable systems, right? What is important? What is foundation, or what is fundamental fact is basically having all these unique identifiers. Now, each provider, each facility, whether it is a laboratory, hospital, or radiology, should have their unique identifier. Without that, the data will not be interoperable. Now, for example, personal health identifier, PHI, which is nothing but beneficiary registry, right? The patient or people, they should have their unique identifier. Every provider or doctor should have their own identifier. Every facility, every health worker, whether it's ASHA or nursing staff, so everybody which is delivering the healthcare services should be uniquely identifiable. And unless these facilities, these registries are not being used, data will not be interoperable. Okay. Now let's come to the modules which are health delivery information system, which are so we have MVP. MVP is nothing but minimum viable product. Now, all these modules are basically part of MVP. That means every hospital should have at least these modules to perform their functions. Now, these are basically, add-on modules. You can have inventory, nursing, telemedicine, whatever. I mean, depending on the features, functionalities, or the services being provided in the hospital or the facility, these modules are add-on modules. However, with these MVP modules, every hospital should be able to take care of their record management. So again, outreach, appointment, registration, EMR, billing, ADT, LIS, pharmacy, RIS, all these are very important, and without these, any of these modules, basically, it's difficult for a hospital to manage the data. Now, coming back again, how to make the systems interoperable, and we spoke about the facilities, registries, right? So facility registry, etc. Now coming back to MDDS, which is nothing but common master data for India, and this has also been recommended by NDHB. Now all these data type, data size, value sets, code directories, if all these data elements are taken into the specific formats and all these recommendations, then a system can be interoperable. Now, for example, gender, right? One system says it's a male, female, and other system says something else. Then data will not be meaningful, even if it is being transmitted between one system to another system. Now, for example, you take a date. If it is MMDDYY format and some other system, it is DDMMYY format. In that case also, if the data is being exchanged between these two systems, it will not be meaningful data. So all these standards or metadata standards are important to be followed to make the systems interoperable. Now, configurability built into application by design, basically. So now here we'll talk more about microservice architecture. So microservice architecture means, every feature and functionality will have its own, microservice with associated database. So what happens basically, if you want to make a change, even a small change in one of the functions or features, it's very easy. You don't have to touch the entire source code of the system for that matter. So it's a quick, you can very easily make change, and which also is cost effective. And of course, I mean, we'll talk about in this particular slide what are microservices. So different microservices, say for example, registration microservice. So these registration microservice or a group of microservices will form a module. So for example, OPD module, right? OPD module, what it needs basically, you need a registration, you need billing, you need EMR. So all these services coming together will be your OPD module. IPD module will have different, features and functionalities where you'll have right from registration till nursing management, your OT management, your laboratory management, your radiology management will also be part of your IPD's modules. So microservices, a group of microservices will be a module, and group of modules will be your HDIS. So all these OPD, IPD, radiology, all these modules together will be your HDIS system. Dr. Pankaj, I would like your expert comments on this as well.
Sure, thanks. So microservices are, as Dr. Atul said, that a very good way of breaking down a monolithic system into very, very small services, which are, each service is sort of so granular.
I'm not able to hear.
Yeah, so it is so granular that it is able to sort of a couple of functionalities can be bundled into one microservice. And so as Dr. Atul said, that you don't have to bring down the entire system, you just have to change a little bit, and then it will be able to make the change. And best examples are all these latest digital systems. So your Netflix, Amazon, Uber, your Ola, all of these systems work using microservices. And it has such a small footprint. Gone are the days when you needed a very, very large infrastructure to host it. Now it comes on your phone. And these are all serverless technologies, so you don't really need a large server at the back to make it work. And it's a very intelligent system. The digital systems are becoming so intelligent; it knows about you more than what you know about yourselves. So that is how microservices are evolving, and we'll see a little bit more about microservices. What we have done is we put a bunch of microservices in the open source, and a lot of these microservices are now going to be available as the Health Delivery Information System (MVP), minimum viable.
Dr. Pankaj, you can also talk on the current slide that is available on the screen right now.
Sure. So Health Delivery Information Systems basically are a bundle of modules, and modules are a bundle of microservices, as Dr. Atul said. And a lot of these microservices actually, so the flexibility that microservice gives you is that it can be, if you want to sort of make a small change in one microservice, you don't have to bring down the entire system. And earlier you needed large servers to host all these microservices, but today you don't need to do that. So you're designing it for the mobile. It can work just like your Netflix, for example. It can work on your mobile, it can work on a laptop, it can work on your TV, it can work even in a normal movie theater. So very soon you will find movie theaters running Netflix. That's begun to happen in the US. It will happen in India very soon. So the same thing you will find in healthcare. Digital is going to take healthcare by storm. this is exactly what is going to happen. That suddenly you will find that all these large systems will vanish, and everything will come inside the mobile phone.
Sure. Sorry, I had a technical issue, but thank you, Dr.
Yeah, that's
Pankaj.
fine. So covered that. Please go ahead.
Sure. So we spoke about microservices, right? Now let's take a look at what primary care versus secondary care, and what are different services which are required, right? So let's say take a first example of primary care. Now you need to register a patient, right? You need to register a patient, you need to generate a bill or bill collection. Now what is difference? If you come to us primary versus tertiary or secondary, then more information is needed for secondary or tertiary care centers. They will need insurance policy ID. They will need bank account number. They will also need payer details, etc. So all these services, depending on whether it is a primary or secondary or tertiary care facility, all these microservices can be configured together to make that system. So the primary care or secondary care will not have what tertiary care needs, or primary care will not have what the secondary or tertiary care system needs, basically. So all these basically differences, and which are actually benefits of using microservices architecture. Now, coming, how to make the systems adaptable, right? So in this particular slide, there are three important, you can say standards should be used. For example, the application should be intuitive. That means it should be user friendly. Now, if you compare hospital information system, and if you take the example of, say, for example, Uber or Ola, even if illiterate or with a very limited digital literacy, people are able to use Ola or Uber very comfortably. So we should make our system so user friendly so that it will be very easily can be adopted by the users. Now, configurability. Now, user configurability, again, if you have a form builder inside, so if for every change you should now what is happening in India is basically for every small change, hospital has to go to the vendor to make that change happen. But if the system has got form builder, the hospitals can configure their own templates based on their own SOPs or protocols. So for example, specialty based templates, so it can be easily configurable by the hospital without going to the vendors. Now, minimal clicks or typings or scrolling. Basically, order sets. Order set is nothing but a group of services, right? Say I'll just give an example of a doctor ordering. So doctor will diagnose a patient, and based on the diagnosis, he will either order medications, investigations, whether it is a laboratory investigation or radiology investigations or procedures. But for every such order, doctor will have to go to the different screens to order. Say, for example, he will first order medications. Then he goes to the laboratory, orders, where he will choose a couple of more investigations required for that patient based on the diagnosis. He will then go to the radiology. Instead of that, if order set is created by into the system, which will be triggered by entering the diagnosis, it will make doctors' life very easy, because after you enter the diagnosis, one more pop-up screen will come where doctor has to just click or select the check boxes for medications, orders, whether it is a patient education material, whether it is a investigation, whether it is a procedure. So everything can be done from the one screen with just a clicks of the or the button. So if you make the system such a configurable with minimal clicks, it will be easily adopted by the doctors and of course other staff as well. And of course, clinically rich applications that aids decision making. which is also CDSS, which is Clinical Decision Support System, which is still in India not being considered, but of course, which is very important from the healthcare delivery perspective, because it gives added information at the point of care for the doctors to minimize different errors, or to support their diagnosis by giving a lot of different information at the point of care. I think we'll cover here. Dr. Pankaj, would you like to have anything more than this? Basically, we'll start implementation methodology next session.
Yeah, we can get into the implementation methodology. The only thing that is sort of can be added on the clinical decision support system is that it not only provides you additional information, but also it is sort of looking over the shoulder of the doctor and saying that, here are things that you may have sort of not been able to read because of your busy practice. These are new research that has come, and it will provide you those links. And it may also sort of be able to provide. So when we were talking about CPOE in our previous session, the clinical decision support system was also able to detect whether there are duplicate medications or duplicate lab tests, or if there is a contraindicated route of administration and things like that. So those kind of clinical decision support are very valuable. It reduces the errors that may happen during the clinical practice. Institute of Medicine's report in the US has said that there are about 98,000 deaths that happen in the US which are preventable medical errors. In India, we don't even have a study like that, so we don't know how many are happening in India. So clinical decision support definitely helps you there, and there are multiple ways of clinical decision support. Earlier, it used to be done using a rule-based engine. So all the knowledge of the doctors, clinicians, everything used to be sort of taken, converted into rules, and those rules were put into a system, and then based on triggers, the relevant rule will come up and guide the doctor. But times are changing very rapidly. Artificial intelligence is coming to support the clinical decision support system in a very big way. Now it is very soon you will find artificial intelligence taking over this role, and then sort of guiding and then telling the doctor in terms of what are the options available, and you can treat it or you can use it for your evidence-based medicine. So you have a patient of diabetes with difficult infection in the foot, and you want to figure out what are the best medications that are available. You can go and ask the system and say, tell me for this patient what is the best option available. So that is the kind of model that is available, and very soon artificial intelligence will replace the rule-based engine models that existed in the past. And so the good thing about India is that we may be able to leapfrog. Many of the doctors in India have not even used the rule-based engine clinical decision support, so they may be able to leapfrog directly to the artificial intelligence.
Sure.
Back to Dr. Atul.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Pankaj. Giving an example, basically, India, basically the population or the patient and doctor or provider ratio is very huge, right? So giving that every doctor is treating a lot of patients in a day. Example is basically a patient is having, say, issue with the liver, right? I mean, any condition which is associated with the liver, and his investigations are still pending. Doctor has ordered the liver function test, but normally doctor will prescribe drug based on the clinical the condition of the patient. So doctor prescribes it, and the report comes with the liver function test where the liver functions are raised. So and unfortunately, basically the medication order is basically hepatotoxic as well. So all these can be avoided if there is a CDSS at the in the system available. So that really helps doctors to take right decisions at the right time. I think Dr. Pankaj will stop here because next session is basically for implementation methodology and healthcare delivery system. It's another session for this.